Okay, it is 8:31 and it is Monday, September the 14th, 2020. Welcome to week 6, the very final lecture for drugs and crime. And my name is Richard Wright. I've been with you for the last 5.5 weeks, almost 6 weeks coming up here. And um, hope you've learned a lot about the reason why I said at the beginning of the course that there is a strong correlation between drugs and crime, and why um, crime occurs because of the drug problem and the effect that it has on families and on our society, our community, and recognizing the role that law enforcement and other criminal justice professionals are now recognizing concerning the health problems that go along with individuals who are um, using drugs or hooked on drugs or addicted to drugs. So this will be the final lecture. Your week 4 assignments will be completed um, in tonight, and then of course your week 5 was just turned in yesterday. I will be placing zeros in the book for individuals who have not turned in their week 5. Uh, and again, I repeat what I said before in the previous lecture, that when you see a 0, that only means that you haven't turned in the assignment. It does not mean you cannot still turn in the assignment. I received a message from a student asking me not to put a 0 in, but I can't do that. I have to put a 0 in every Monday for assignments that aren't completed. Of course, so I can override and change those when the assignment is turned in. So when you see a 0, it is not a signal that that is your final grade. Your final grade will be determined by whether or not you turn in something, whether or not it satisfies the requirements of the rubric, and so forth. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Let's go ahead and get started with tonight's lecture, the final lecture, and I'll share my screen. Okay. As you can see, you see recordings um, 1 through 5 here. Week 6 will be in here. It'll be sometime, well, by the time you see it, if you're not here, it won't be until Tuesday, because it takes a while for WebEx to generate the recording for me. But it will be posted and sent to you. So let's take a look at the calendar for the last time. As you can see, we're in the week. Today is the 14th. Your reading assignment is in here. And chapter 10 is that. All right. And then you will see that your initial posts are due tomorrow night, and your reply posts are due Saturday. No, I'm sorry. I messed up. Friday, the 18th. That is the last day of class. So all assignments, that means that actually your final exam and your reply posts are due by that date, along with the key phrase. The 19th will not work. It has to be by Friday, the 18th. I cannot extend that um, unless there have been arrangements made. And
adding 1-800 flowers. Please unlock your device first.
That's that Bixby jumping in there all the time. I don't know why, because I keep it locked. But at any rate, uh, 18th is the last day of class. Absolutely. So be sure you abide by that. I've said it every week that it is. Okay. So therefore, those who have zeros from week 5 assignments that were due on yesterday, today I will be putting zeros in. You still have uh, this week to turn those in, except discussion posts from week 5. You cannot do discussion posts after that because the discussion forum ended for week 5 on the 12th. Okay, so let's go back into course home. Let's look at the announcement for this week. As you can see, it reiterates the things that I've said. Module 6, we're dealing with drug-related criminal activity, treatment, and rehabilitation strategies. Read chapter 10 of the textbook. I did send the corresponding PowerPoints this time. No one brought to my attention that I didn't send week 5, but I did send both of them this week. So you have the final chapter, week 10, in the textbook to use. You don't have a written assignment this week in terms of papers. You did your last one during week 5. So we're going to talk about treatment related to opioid addiction and drug treatment rehabilitation programs. Excuse me. Next, we're going to remind you that methadone clinics, your discussion post is due tomorrow, 11:59 p.m., and then your reply post by Friday, as I said earlier. Finally, you have a final exam, which is timed. And I had suggested to you that the best way to prepare for the final exam is to look at the PowerPoints for each of the chapters. And it should be pretty straightforward because your project research should have prepared you, along with the things that I covered during the lectures should be very valuable in terms of helping you to prepare for this final exam. Okay, and I'll tell you specifics about it in a few minutes. Again, these are the final reminders. The course ends Friday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. Then take time to complete the end of quarter student evaluations received in your email. And then you know about my motto, adversity is a springboard to success. You learned about that during week 1, where I talked to you about how I understand the challenges that you have. I do remind students that I operate and work with students with the challenges, but I have to work within the rules of the school. Okay. And usually that boils down to me dealing with written assignments being extended and things of that nature. Okay. I did say this before, that after week 4, that I could not accept assignments from weeks 1 to 3 unless I was aware during that period of extenuating circumstances. Students should not have come to me after week 4 and said they had extenuating circumstances during weeks 1 to 3, because you should let me know. I established that process week 1 from the very beginning of this course, and let me know right away. I know there's been a lot of issues that students have had. I had a few people who had issues that they couldn't anticipate, but they did let me know right away, such as the storms, the hurricanes, and things of that nature. Okay, I had a few students in Texas, a few in Florida that had those problems, and they let me know about those contemporaneously with that. All right. And I've been very flexible because of this pandemic that looks like it's not going away anytime soon. So the good part about this course is that we've been online before the pandemic. So it really didn't change too much about what you did in classes with me or with any of us who in criminal justice. I think business is the same way as well. Any of the programs that are completely online. All right, so let's go into the module. I've reminded you to use the drug and crime course guide throughout the six week assignments to help you get your assignments completed. So let's quickly look at, as you can tell, your discussion on methadone clinics. In your first post, you give one side of the argument whether methadone clinics are an appropriate option for overcoming opioid addiction, and if so, why and why not. Don't concern yourself with what you see me post, because if you can, but don't let that determine what your post is. And then, of course, your reply post is a student with a different position from yours. Of course, you know, again, that is due Friday. Okay. I don't require citations. So even if you don't include citations, I don't deduct points for that. Anyone who says that I've deducted points because they didn't provide citations or references is not telling the truth, or either they're misunderstanding my comments that I make. Okay. Mine are usually based on content and or whether or not your discussion post was submitted on time. And then your final exam. This is the other topic. It's an hour-long exam. You'll have one opportunity. It is a timed exam. You are not supposed to have notes, books, PowerPoints, screens open, or things of that nature. You will have to go through and you will have to complete um, this exam. And it is multiple choice questions. And as I remind students all the time that take multiple choice questions, usually there are two that you know that are not it. Then you have the next two that are close, and sometimes it includes, if you see it includes more than one and you know, then there's going to be a all of the above, or either it's going to be a combination of the two, such as A and C. It may say at D, um, A and C. And so you'd pick, of course, not A and C because you can only pick one. So you'd pick D, which covers A and C. So you're familiar with that. All you have been taking these kinds of tests long before you came to college. So that's what the final is all about. Okay. Um, and then, of course, your live classroom lecture that I give you point. All right. And then now let's talk about what you need to help you. So we're going to talk about drug treatment challenges related to opioid addiction, drug treatment and rehabilitation programs. Okay. And then we're going to adjourn for the evening. Okay. Now, there is a video that is longer than the videos that you've seen before, and it's called Chasing Heroin. They've added that to it, and you see it at the bottom of the link. Remember, we had Chasing the Dragon last week, dealing with opioids as well, but Chasing Heroin is another one that I'm not going to put on. I'm just going to show you how it looks once you open it up. And it is opening up. There it goes. And so you can take a look at this. I highly recommend taking a look at this video and studying it because it will help you too with the exam. And so there are sections of it dealing with what the law enforcement do, how the medical aspects of it, um, and those kinds of things. So you take a look at that. It's a very revealing film. It's just too long for me, of course, to put in a lecture because the lecture would be 2 hours long, and I don't want my final lecture to be that long for any of my students here. Matter of fact, it's one of the shorter ones that I do. So, as you already know from what you've learned from week 1 all the way to now, is that opioid addiction is devastating. I'm recognizing the fact that there are all kinds of problems, difficulties with people overcoming opioid addiction, um, adversely affecting their financial positions, their status in society, um, causing many individuals to commit crimes to support their habits, um, causing people to shorten their lives, overdosing, and dealing with that. And so uh, the key thing to recognize is that we who are um, professionals need to be of support to those individuals. There are people who have taken the position and still do, not many now, that opioid addiction is caused by that person. Well, not necessarily. You saw if in Chasing the Dragon, and you'd see in this video that I just got through talking about chasing heroin, that it could be a spiraling thing where a person can find themselves going to the doctor um, for surgery, post surgery. I know when I haven't had a lot of serious surgeries. I had a hernia surgery years and years and years ago, and it was one of the times I knew I had to take painkillers, but um, I didn't stay on them long. But there are people I know that are even close to me that I get upset with them about taking painkillers, because what some people don't realize is that painkillers also change your ability to be able to understand the seriousness of them. The only thing that you know is you want to stop that pain. And then there are people who start out with one prescribed drug and will go to the doctor and ask for a more powerful prescribed drug. And what that person is doing is actually setting themselves up for graduation to something that will continue to deal with that pain, and it leaves them with all kind of psychological issues, physical problems as well. And so that ends up leading individuals to opioid addiction. And as it says here, as opioid use begins, the body develops an increasingly higher tolerance. And that's what I was talking about, which result in the need for higher and higher doses of the drug. And as people stop the use of the drug, physical challenges, including um, restlessness, muscle, bone pain, insomnia, diarrhea, vomiting, cold flashes, and sweating. These are some of the same things that the person goes through when they take the drugs, but then they find themselves dealing with situations where they want to get off of that drug. And so what has happened is that there's been substances like methadone, which you'll discover from my comments that you'll see in the discussion posts that I'm not a fan of methadone because it's a drug in itself. It's exchanging one drug for another, and that your whole life is that you end up stuck on methadone. And so these clinics are far in between, and that um, it is also something that can be, um, if you take a drug test, the methadone uh, shows up, and but it doesn't eliminate the possibility of using other types of drugs. So I call it a stopgap measure or a delay of execution. It's almost like that kind of thing. And so what it really does is it just you're still going to have to go through the withdrawal, but it just lessens what you have to deal with when it comes to dealing with withdrawal. And so it's pretty bad, pretty bad. And as I said before, um, I don't like it. I've never been on drugs like that, but I see the effects of it. I've seen the effects of it as a law enforcement officer. I've seen the effects of that as a attorney, particularly as a defense attorney representing individuals who um, were caught what we call drug cases and had to go to drug court, and the judges would put the individuals on these programs, and many of these programs that would prescribe ultimately methadone, and when they could get to the methadone, they function. However, when they miss times they could not, then they're stuck, and it becomes a lifelong issue. And then the other thing that is, and so it becomes a crutch, or only, I hate to use this term, but it fits, is you enable individuals to find themselves living on that methadone. Uh, just like you take, I have high blood pressure, I take a medication that I take, but the truth of the matter is that that's the same kind of thing that happens with methadone. So and as I said before, it just delays the work of abstaining and recovery. Um, it is a very difficult thing for people to do withdrawals and not be in the facility um, in house. It is very difficult and virtually impossible for individuals to find themselves working to get off of these drugs or abstaining when they are released, because what's going to happen is that individuals will find themselves oftentimes in the environments that got them caught up in the situation. Maybe a family member, maybe be a friend, using friends loosely in that term. And the point of the matter is you may be around someone who's still doing it. So, so the point of the matter is, as it says, when taking methadone, a person may not be abusing opioids, but his or her commitment to the actions necessary for recovery is seldom more than half-hearted attempt. So they rely upon the methadone as keeping them operating. That's a bad way um, to live. Okay, and then uh, oftentimes um, there's just it, you stop taking methadone, you go right back to where you were before. Intensive counseling, attending meetings, getting a sponsor, building a support network will all end up being pushed away. What I'm saying is that the inevitable of what a person needs to do. It's like, for example, telling a person that if you continue to eat junk food, then you're going to shorten your life. And that person um, will not stop it. So their life ends up getting shortened because health um, issues occur first and then possible death after that. So, as it says here, over 70% of people relapse after stopping using methadone. So it's a challenge. It's somebody says, well, what can you do in the meantime? Just what I said. You have to go through it. It's, you know, if you want to lose weight, there are these things that you can take, these pills. They tell people you can take this pill and it'll cause you to lose weight. You can drink this, it'll cause you to lose weight. Only two things are going to cause you to lose weight, and that is exercise, appropriate rest, and eating healthy foods. That's it. I don't care what, I'm not a doctor, but I've paid attention to what the doctors say and watch certain cultures that don't have the same problems that we in this country have because of our eating habits. Man, fast food eating is almost like a tradition in the United States. Okay, so anyway, so those are some of the challenges. So what's the best thing of what we said a long time ago in this course? Just don't do it. Just don't do it, because once you do it, it's like a spiraling path, and it will eventually um, wipe you out. Okay, it's um, it's self-suicide. That's what I call it. That sounds redundant, but it is that exactly, or rapid. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the things that are around here. And, you know, um, dealing with drug treatment and rehabilitation programs, everybody individually responds in a different uh, fashion. And there are treatments, just like doctors don't treat you for any other ailment the way that they treat other people. It'll be based upon your health history, it'll be based upon your weight, and those kinds of things as well. But the point of the matter is that so there has to be many different approaches based upon an individualized plan. It's almost like I taught special education for a while, and we had what we call IEPs. And IEPs are individualized education programs. And what we did was we developed those programs for that student who had a special need to help them to learn. And so it's the same kind of things. IEPs, some are needed for dealing with education. Knowledge is power in terms of dealing with drugs and paying attention to what you see around you. I have seen some of the stuff that you see in these videos. I've seen them firsthand. You know, and I'm talking about in all levels of life. I'm talking about from professionals. I knew lawyers, I knew judges, I knew doctors, I knew educators, um, I knew preachers. I knew a lot of preachers, pastors, ministers, or individuals who are even involved in the field of being a probation officer, parole officer, all of these. I've seen these people, some of them on drugs, and how their life ended or how their careers ended. But basically, when I say their life, I don't mean they died physically, but they were the walking dead. That's what I call them. And so I'm 70 years old. I have my little issues that I have, but the point of the matter is that excuse me, I know friends of mine who didn't make it this far, um, who succumbed because of drugs and alcohol abuse and things of that nature. Um, so, so anyway, we started talking about, as I said earlier, talking about individuals who are going to um, abstain from using the drug generally find themselves with an absolute necessity for long-term inpatient residential treatment and can take, as it says here, anywhere from 6 to 12 months. But the point of the matter is, it depends on what the individual needs. And then it also, as I said earlier, depends on that individual, um, their environment. The environment that you go into can bring you back to where you were. There are what we call triggers. For example, there are individuals who hear certain songs and then they remember those were songs that they used to get high on and would listen to. And it plants a seed that, if they continue to do so, germinates in them. And before they know it, they say, well, let me just go back and just check it out. I won't get stuck. Famous last words. Famous last words. Uh, the key thing is, when you get to a position that you start to go through treatment, stay away from the habits. I talked about at the beginning of this course, starting at 12 o'clock, let's say at the top of the clock, is where you're stuck at. If you go to 3 o'clock, you can still see where you need to go. You see where you came from. But then when you get to 6 o'clock, which is at the bottom, you're in a new direction. And then keep staying on 6. Don't go to 7, 8, 9, because then you'll be heading back to where you came from again, and you'll eventually end up back there, and the cycle goes on. So once you get to 6 o'clock, then stay on 6 and move further away from the hours of thinking about the situation and circumstances. The key thing is this, is that you have to um, become a new person. You have to new friends, new lifestyle, and it's pretty hard for many people. So anyway, short-term residential treatment is the common way um, to detoxify. Um, but again, if you go back out after that, then you're going to run into a problem. And those stays generally, as it says here, are roughly 30 days. Now, the reason for that is because it is believed that within 30-day period, if you consistently do something, it will um, recalibrate your actions in life and cause you to do different things. But any interruptions are setbacks. And you know what? I'm going to tell you, good people, that I have seen people who have gone through the period that they're talking about, the 30 days, but then they went back and spent time around people who were doing the same thing that they used to do. And guess what? They joined in. And so it kind of undid those 30 days that that person stayed clean. It's just like if you lose weight and you start doing the things you did before to gain that weight, it's going to come back. Outpatient individual counseling focuses on reducing or stopping the substance. So there's things that are involved where you have group counseling, where you are involved in a group. You may have someone who is appointed to be um, your sponsor, or someone that you have to be accountable to. Deal with accountability groups. And you have individuals in those groups who have overcome, and they will help you overcome. Now, here's the problem. I have seen in those groups people who really haven't overcome and they said they overcame. And so what happens is, out of sight, out of mind with that individual, they will just kind of like tell that individual, just a sample won't hurt you. Just don't get to the point that you use it regularly. Bad advice, because what it does is it takes you down that spiraling road again. Peers, as I already talked about, they play a big role. And you have organizations like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and other what we call 12-step programs that provide peer support to end substance use. And so um, these groups are important components to deal with the issue. However, remember, once again, it's going to depend on excuse me, how strong that individual is in terms of their ability. Um, as I tell people all the time, and it's not about whether you believe in God or not, but I said one of the things that God did was he left us with a free will, which means we have the decision to make on how we live our lives. Well, that's the same thing here. We're dealing with addiction. You have a choice as to whether or not you either enough is enough is enough is enough. You've seen enough people perish. You've seen the road they've gone down, and you have to commit yourself to staying on that. The only way a train can make it across if it stays on the tracks. Well, it's the same thing you have to do, because if you get off of the tracks, stop off, sometimes even to try to help somebody else, and you haven't gotten to the level, it's not selfish to help yourself first. It's just like the old thing that you guys know and heard probably. If you're flying on a plane and then the air gets light and the mask drop, do you put the child's mask on, or do you put yours on first? Which one is the best way? You tell me. I'm asking. Tell me. Type it in the chat box. You put yours on first or the child's on first? Wrong. Wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. That's the natural tendency that some people think. The actual opposite is. The reason is because, remember, the child doesn't know how to do this. And you don't know how to do it right because you need to be of sound mind when you help them. And so therefore, if your mask is on first, then it's your ability to be able to rescue and save that child. The child cannot do it with you. I'm talking about a little child. Does that make sense? Yeah. And there are some people says, oh yeah, that's just like a person. I have friends who are lifeguards, and they'll tell me this. They say, as well as they've been trained, that one of the things that they tell you is that you have to sneak up on the drowning person, because if the drowning person sees you coming, or if you catch them from the front, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to grab, and their grip is what almost like a death grip, and they won't let go because that's what they see as helping, but really it can cause both parties. That's why the surprise attack or approach from lifeguards is to come up behind the person, around them, and then put their arms around the neck area, not to choke them, but to bring them to safety, because then they're not able to fight them. So that's the same kind of the concept. People don't think about that, but that's the way that They tell you, and then when you're on planes, they tell you exactly what I just said about putting the mask on yourself first. Okay. For opioid addiction, medication-assisted treatment with methadone, ibuprofen, or extended release naloxone plays a role in the treatment. Yes, because if you're dealing with naloxone one, you are dealing with sometimes arresting the opioid chart things. We talked about that Noxalone and Narcan a few weeks ago, and how law enforcement uses that. But the point is, if you don't get to a person in time, it's not going to help. But these prescriptions, um, the ones I just got through talking about, at least, will um, that is not now troxolone, which is different from what I was talking about, noxolone a few minutes ago. These prescribed medications just mask the symptoms. Do you know that painkillers or aspirin or ibuprofen or those things, they don't cure you. They just take away the symptoms. So there's the issue that you're dealing with is still there, but it supposedly gives you the ability and strength to fight off what you need to do. But that is a problem. That is why I have trouble, very serious trouble with methadone. So anyway, the Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program, many people have heard of that, um, is something that actually lays out a manageable step for some individuals. And you go all the way through, and the key things that you recognize is that you're not able to help yourself, and that they use God in theirs to not to deal with it from a point of religion, but to get you to understand there's a power higher than you that can help you, and that's what they're talking about. And you can plug in what you want to, but the key thing is that, notice what the first point is: you have to admit that you're powerless over alcohol. Same thing applies for drugs. And that your life is out of control. In other words, admit you have a problem. If you're in denial, as I call it, the river in Egypt, which is the Nile River, but denial is what I'm referring to as a parody. It is where you really don't think you have a problem. But usually the one who has a problem is not a good judge of whether they have a problem. Usually the people who are good judges of whether a person has a problem are those who are not in that same situation. Second point, come to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. That's what I was talking about. Again, relying on help, that you know you need some help. Okay. There's no self-help issues here. Um, make a decision to turn our will and lives over the care of God as we understood him. Again, back to what I said, your free will, you have to decide to, as I, and this is something that we do. I'm a pastor in a church, and I'm not saying this to try to convert any of you guys, but I'm saying this, that if a person comes in to a building with a gun, the first thing that you do is throw your hands up as a sign of surrender. Well, we do that in church. To your situations, we throw our hands up. Some people say to praise, but the point is we also throw them up because it's a surrendering, a giving up on what we have decided to try to do. And so reaching a power that is greater than you. Um, 4, make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, what we call self-examination. You can't look at what somebody did that caused this to happen to you. You have to look at your situation. My grandmother used to tell me when I was a kid, she said, son, every tub has to stand on its own bottom. You may be able to be advised by me as my grandchild, but in the end, your actions are going to dictate what happens to you, what you decide to do with the information. And it's like you, if you're a parent and you have children, it's the same situation. It's like you as a child under your parents, the same situations. Okay. 5, admit it to God, to ourselves, and others, the exact nature. In other words, um, I've done wrong, but I need to fix this and begin to fix it. Don't just talk about it. Number 6, um, we're entirely ready to have God remove those defects. In other words, when you make those statements like you made in number 5, say what you mean and mean what you say. And as Nike said, just do it. Turn it into action and not just words. It's just like a student tells me, he says, well, I'm going to do my assignments this quarter, and I'm going to get them in on time. And then they proceed not to get them in on time. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have obstacles that can happen, that you can get them in late. However, the point of the matter is following the course to work with the person who's working with you to keep them aware of your current situation so that maybe some help can be extended from the other side. That's what I do as your professor. But I don't have a crystal ball. I know that some professors, but these are usually adjuncts, who will reach out to students that they see are doing pretty bad. And they'll reach out to a lot of them. But uh, I have 100 and some students. Kind of hard to do that, especially in a 5.5 week period of time. 7. Um, oh, 6. Oh no, we got 6. 7. Humbly ask. You have to be humble about your situation and the problem that you're in. Humility is what you need. Um, and there's an individual who doesn't want to get humble about it. They're going to think that they don't have as big a problem. So, oh, I just have a little bit of problem. That's what people say about cancer. It starts out with a little bitty mold, and then it grows in cells, and then it multiplies, and then before you know it, it's out of control. Make a list of all persons that you've hurt. And, what you're doing is you're giving yourself a focus on mistakes that you've made and how you intend to fix them. Best possible way to fix them is get yourself taken care of first. Make direct amends to such to people whenever possible. That's usually pretty difficult if it involves money and things like that. And um, except when it creates more fire onto the situation. Continue to take the journey, personal inventory, uh, when you were wrong and properly admitted it. Stay on course. That's it. Stay on course. Then number 11 of 12, um, prayer and meditation. Um, improve your conscious contact with God as we understand Him, praying only for knowledge of His will. Again, back to what I just said a few minutes ago. It's up to you to decide how you're going to handle that number 11. The key thing, though, is keep reminding yourself that there is something that is greater than you. I heard people say to me, well, I'm not operating on something I can't see. I says, you're living on something you can't see. And they say, what do you mean? I said, oxygen. You cannot identify oxygen, but you can identify the lack of it being present in an area where you are. That one I used before on many occasions, but it's a true statement. It's true. And what does oxygen taste like? Nobody knows. What does it smell like? Nobody knows. I know one thing. What is one of the issues that you hear over and over with this social justice issue? I can't breathe. That goes back to the oxygen in the body. Okay? That means there's something that you need to exist and live is missing, and you have to have that to live. There's no human being I know who can live without oxygen. Do you know of any? Nope, there are none. And so um, having had a spiritual awakening, um, we carry this message to individuals and practice these principles in your own life. And that's the key thing. So, with dealing with these programs, one of the key things to remember is the input of the individuals themselves, the commitment, and the ability to be able to understand that um, pointing fingers will not get the job done. It will not create a um, a situation that is conducive to uh, and is not in your best interest. What's in the best interest of the individual is to get on board and recognize again that you have a problem, and then begin to do something about it. And it's just like my lectures and teachings. I give you things to help you, but if you don't use those things, if you're doing it just for a grade, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I was always a student who didn't learn for grades. I did get good grades. Obviously, I had to have in order to have gone on and become a lawyer. But the point is that I wasn't in it for the grades. I was in it for the knowledge, and respected the wisdom and experience of those individuals who had come before me, such as my professors. Um, uh, I looked at individuals who were lawyers and listened to them talk about the roads that they took and the steps that they took, paid attention to those who were successful and those who were not successful. And that's how you do it. And it's just like I tell my kids, be careful who you hang with. I said, because as I used the illustration many times when I was a lawyer, and I had parents to bring their kids to me uh, for juvenile court, and some even for adult court. And they would say things like, well, I was just there. I was just there. That's why I ended up being caught and charged with the case. So I give them this illustration. And if you think about what I'm getting ready to do, think about this, guys. If you're sitting, and I tell these young people this, I says, you're sitting next to your parent. I says, and I am holding a water hose. And I put the water hose out and point it at them or at you. What's going to happen to the ones that I'm not pointing to? What's going to happen to them? You get my point? What'll happen to them if they're there with you? They're going to get wet. Aren't they going to get wet? You said they'll move away, but aren't they going to get wet? Some water could get on them. Isn't that true? And the reason why is because they were there. They were there. And that's exactly my point in a nutshell, is that individuals who find themselves trying to recover, if they hang with someone who's using the drugs and they find themselves in situations where they could get arrested, it's usually because they're with those people. If they find themselves using it, it's because they're with those people, even if they're trying. The point of the matter is that the spray can still hit them and they could end up with consequences that were not intended. And that's the point that I've been saying for the last hour about using drugs and individuals, um, with the peers and who they hang with and those kinds of things. Well, the only everybody I know is using drugs. Then you know what? You need to change your environment. Yeah, but they're my relatives. Get away from them. I have relatives that I know. They know me. They know that I don't drink. They know I don't smoke. Has nothing to do with me being a pastor. It's years ago. I mean, way back when I was very young. And excuse me, my voice. And so I find myself even today with some of those same friends, and they will tell people, like they told my wife, they said, we've known Richard since we were teenagers. He never was a drinker or a smoker. He didn't do it, and I wish I had that same road I went down. I look much younger, and my health condition is much better than many of them. The point of the matter is that you have to make your own choice and decide what you're going to do there with that. And so I'm going to end this 5.5 week class final lecture by saying I wish you guys the best. I hope to see many of you further down the road. As I had a student once said to me, she said, Professor Wright, I didn't do well in your class, but it wasn't because you didn't try to help me. It was because I had certain habits that I hadn't broken. There are people who say that there are obstacles that they run into that stop them. You don't want to tell me that because you heard my story during week 1 about how I deal with adversity. And sure, everybody responds different to adversity. I have some, I have some siblings who responded to it differently. I have a sister who overdosed on cocaine. I've shared that before. I have siblings, and I have no brothers, who were drinkers, and they had cirrhosis of the liver and things like that. But it wasn't my goodness, it was my decision making that kept me. And that's what would keep you. So as you proceed forward in your education, just remember there's a person like me out here who's willing to help you. I have helped students to overcome obstacles. Um, and I have seen students, and I have one in particular that now calls me his pastor, but he first met me, he called me his professor. And the reason why he saw what I meant to him in terms of helping him, he was about to be put out of the school, but I worked with him and showed him some things, starting with APA, starting with Grammarly, and then understanding the time management things that he had to apply. And so, good people, I continue to do that same thing today for everybody. And just let me know what you need, and I can do it. I'm not going to violate the rules, the policies. I'm not going to bend them and stretch them. I may consult with my dean to ask me for some guidance in terms of trying to do something, but I do pretty well with stuff like that. But we all have times when we get things in slow, like I'm doing with the grading. But um, I will get them done, and I will get them done by the time the final deadline, as they say, is um, is there. So, well, good night, and again, I wish you the best. I do have to give you a key word, and that is methadone. Give me that word, and you will get your points. Some people come to the lecture just to get that. That's sad. That's sad. Just like some people just go to class so they can satisfy the attendance requirements. I don't go to class for that. I went to class so I can get the information. Many of my professors and instructors and teachers remembered me because I was always the one who wanted to know why this and get an understanding. And that's it. So I'm going to say good night to you. I wish you the best. Again, as I say, stay safe during this pandemic. Please, guys, um, from a 70-year-old African American male who's in the high risk group, I encourage you, regardless of your race, your age, listen to what the professionals are saying, listen to what the doctors are saying. And, you know, um, I am a lawyer. I know the law. I know what the Constitution says, and um, it's something that a lot of people who don't know anything about it try to use it. Their rights. I have constitutional rights. Well, I have the right to live and not die, and I want that protected as well. So, so my point is wear a mask, wear a mask, and stay safe, and continue. If you need me, you know how to reach out to me. So, good night. You're welcome.